even as it was reclaimed, that fifth way to describe otaku appears, and that's wotaku, right? So the one I was kind of working on with my book. And these are the people who really kind of are a new generation of fans. And they're not so interested in identifying as a subculture. So the people from the 1980s, they're not so interested in describing themselves as, you know, fans from outside of Japan. And they're not so interested in describing themselves as cool or hip or new otaku in that sense. So they kind of cut themselves off from all these things. They say, well, no, actually what we are is otaku, we're different. And this is kind of the new generation of otaku that I see appearing in Japan. So to get back to that kind of caveat that I put into the American fandom, I think something similar is happening in the United States. Because actually, probably most of you in the audience wouldn't identify as an otaku. You might, depending on who you're talking to. But I think at a lot of conventions and online, there's also a kind of a budding resistance to calling yourself an otaku. It's kind of almost moving towards the meaning that it has in Japan, or it had in Japan in the 1980s. So it's becoming more negative. And people are more interested or more willing to describe themselves as anime fans. So they're kind of adopting a more general way to describe themselves. Just saying you're an anime fan already identifies you as a sort of subculture in the United States, with the way it wouldn't in Japan. If you call yourself an anime fan in Japan, it doesn't make sense, because everybody watches anime anyway. Everybody already is a fan. So if you want to identify yourself as a fan, you have to kind of say, well, I'm an extreme or really an enthusiastic fan, which means I'm otaku. So it's really, are you otaku or not kind of thing. Are you kind of someone who goes deeply into this mass culture or not? So I think it's a different way to approach the word, of course. What's interesting, I think, about the evolution of the word otaku is it goes in opposite directions, right? So if you think about those 6 words, otaku in katakana, hiragana, kanji, otaku, and romaji, Roman letters, and then anime fan, what you'll find is that otaku is steadily becoming more popular, more positive in the case of Japan, where at the same time it seems to be becoming less positive, more negative, and less used in the among fans in the United States. So it seems like we're actually on opposite trajectories, even though we started in opposite places, right? In Japan, it started from a negative position and it's becoming more positive, whereas in the United States, it starts positive and it becomes now more negative. So it's interesting how that works. And also one other interesting kind of point of departure is the fact that we as a generation of fans have both created new words to describe anime fans, right? The United States anime fans, or for some people, otaku. This is a new kind of identity. And in Japan, you can call yourself a wotaku, right? You can call yourself a new kind of fan in that way. Also, some people in Japan call themselves something like a nerd or a geek, something like that. So they claim foreign words the same way we did back in the 1990s. They claim these foreign words to describe themselves as anime fans. So what I want to point out here by describing all these different ways to describe, by pointing out all these different ways to use the word otaku, is it's really complicated. It's a hugely complicated field. So when you talk about otaku, it really becomes something that's based in culture, something that's based in time, something that's based in a distinct cultural production, and that's coming from multiple different locus of power. So in the book, what I wanted to do is kind of trace some of these different evolutions of otaku, some of these different manifestations of it, and also some of the different perceptions. One of the biggest things that comes out in the book, I think, is a focus on Akihabara, of course. And I think my time is almost up, so I'm just going to finish with one last thought. So I focus in the book a lot on Akihabara. And one of the reasons why I do that is because Akihabara, Akibake, this new kind of otaku that hangs out in Akihabara, or has a certain kind of taste that is reflected in the consumption patterns in Akihabara. I wanted to go there because that's where the image is the most in conflict. If you go to Akihabara, you find subculture goods. So things like dating simulator games, Bishoujo games, Ero games, Dojinshi, right next to, Miyazaki Hayao and Pokemon and Sailor Moon. So you've got tourists and otaku right there together. You have local and foreign people right there together. You have businessmen and social dropouts together. So it's really this mixing going on there. And also it became, in the 1990s, a symbol of this new otaku movement. They sort of took over and became a fan community. In the 1990s, during the recession, a lot of niche stores moved into Akihabara. But then in the 2000s, right when the word otaku, Japanese anime, and then fans of anime as otaku became more popular, that's when Akihabara became like this big, almost like a stage to reclaim otaku. If you go onto the Japanese government's website, they talk about Akihabara as an otaku mecca. There's a lot of problems with that, right? Because I mean, you're talking about, first of all, you're using the word mecca. You're not talking about Mecca, right? You're talking about a small corner of Tokyo where people buy anime goods. So that might offend certain people. But you're also using the word otaku, right? You're taking a local subculture term that has negative connotations in the local scene, or did. You're taking that and you're saying, well, actually, come visit it, the otaku mecca, here in Tokyo. And I think that's really interesting. So I kind of latched on to that contradiction of, you know, a subculture of cool or a subculture of pop. So when subculture and pop culture come together, that's kind of the confrontation I wanted to sketch out in this book. So I guess maybe we should ask some questions or take questions or something.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. So what we'll,
all right. So yeah, here's how
anyone's got a question. I'll relay it back to Mario,
so
who
Patrick,
is standing right next to
what's
the
going
mic.
to go on.
And so we'll do like a three-way whisper down the lane to the point where any of your questions
will become horribly
perverted.
He's going to relay them to me, and I'll relay them to you.
Terrible.
I'm assuming that you can't hear the PA system very well.
Don't make that into an actual.
So this
I
is
can
going to be
a little bit, not really well, no.
Yeah. So basically, Uncle Yo will get the questions from the audience, relay it to me,
So
and
a
relay it
question
to you.
for an actual Alaskan living in Japan. Can he see Russia from his apartment?
Actually, question from Uncle Yo. when you were living back in the U.S. of A., could you see Russia from your apartment?
And can you see it now? Because it's right
I
here.
could, yes.
Follow up from Uncle Yo. Can you still see it from your apartment?
No. Now I have to go to northern Japan to see Russia. So I feel distant from my cousins. But yeah, unfortunately, I can always talk to Palin though. Palin can connect me with the Russians there. So
Patrick, have you ever encountered those futuristic dancing, singing, light 'em up toilets?
I don't know if you heard that, but have you encountered any of those singing, light up? Did you say dancing?
Dancing!
Dancing toilets. In Japan.
They don't dance, but yeah, they do light up, and they have like all kinds of interesting functions. I think that somebody told me that the trajectory of fantasy in Japan is really unique because masculinity goes into robots, and then femininity goes into these beautiful girls. So you see very clearly robots and beautiful girls, which is what we like about Japanese pop culture. I would like to know why these toilets are so damn masculine, right? They're so incredibly robotic and they're so strong and intimidating, but they also have all these functions and all this kind of, they take care of you. So I really believe that there's so much to be said, and someone should launch a full study of Japanese toilets. Because for me, there's just so much to be learned from the Japanese toilet culture. And also, just as kind of an oddity and a rarity, I think nobody in the world takes toilets so seriously as in Japan.
There was an article about that in the Times.
For me, it's really alarming, and also, it's moving in a way.
Okay, so do plumbers in Japan, are they referred to as mecha engineers?
Are plumbers in Japan referred to as mecha engineers?
Actually, I think they're referred to as the Mario Brothers. That's what I think.